Hello and welcome to episode 9 Narratives. In the last episode, we spoke of the narrative center of gravity. So it's logical that in this episode, we need to talk about what the human ability is to weave complex stories or narratives. Let's begin with the way the hyperactive agency detector contributes to this. There are well known experiments that you can look up where a person is shown a triangle closely following a smaller one and a circle is on the periphery. It is called the Hyder Simmel animation, and I suggest you take a look at it. Though the animation shows only these moving geometric figures, 97% of people make up a story to describe what is happening. The subject object verb construction is not just language, but a fundamental way in which we make sense of events in the world. Subjects in the Heider Simmel experiment describe one triangle as attacking the other. They even ascribe emotion and character to it, such as it is aggressive or angry, and it is a bully. This makes ample sense as a survival mechanism. If you saw a predator approaching you, viewing it in terms of an agent with a goal of eating you is an important assessment in order to take evasive action. As humans evolved language, we could verbalize these stories. We also began to tell stories with a self at the center. That is what we had called the narrative center of gravity. There are two aspects to the storytelling that are important to our purpose. The first is to recognize that it is a story. It is useful to think and view in this way, but it becomes a problem if we become entangled and enmeshed in the story and assign it a concreteness it does not have. This is the first aspect. The second aspect depends on the first. If you can view this as a story, you will also realize it is malleable. That is, you can modify the story, tell it in different ways, even change it altogether. We actually do this. If you have returned from a vacation, the way you describe it will vary depending on who you're telling it to. So the story of your vacation is malleable. At this point, you will feel like yelling, "Stop! But who is telling the story? There must be a storyteller." To answer this, I will paraphrase Daniel Dennett. He cautions us not to mistake the object of a belief for its cause. Let me state this again because it is a subtle point. Don't mistake the object of a belief for its cause. The point is still subtle, so let's elaborate. Stories are told to children of Santa Claus. The children believe it. It is pointless to ask who is the story about or who is it in these stories. The story is about a story. The story is called Santa Claus. The object in the story or the subject is not the cause of the story. In the same way, in the stories you tell in which you are at the center, the narrative center, what is this you? The you is a story. It is a story called you. Because humans have language, we can verbalize it to others. It is also running in our heads most of the time, the story. For example, you might say, "I am thirsty." This is a story. "I am breathing." This is also a story. If you look closely, the body just goes through various states and changes. You are not in charge. When the water level drops, physiological changes will happen. When the oxygen level drops, other physiological changes will happen. It is a superfluous addition to experience to say, but there is someone who breathes. Asking who is breathing is like asking when the wind blows, who is blowing? If you remove the superfluous addition of a subject called you, there will still be thirst, still breathing. Aha, you will say, but I am the one who decides to get up and go and drink water. Who is that? To answer this, I will need a separate episode. For now, I will merely ask, is everything, even in your own body and brain, happening only because you decide to make it happen? Let's introduce another thought experiment. Let me tell you of a coin tossing tournament. Imagine we organize a tournament in which we toss a coin and ask competitors to call out heads or tails. They compete against each other in pairs, and the coin is tossed until one person calls wrongly. This person loses, and the other advances to the next round. Let's assume we start with 1024 people. So, to start with, 512 pairs play against each other. There are 512 winners. So, in the next round, there are 256 pairs. The 256 winners of this round become 128 pairs, and this continues until one pair is left after 10 rounds. In this final round, one person wins and becomes the tournament winner. Notice that the entire tournament is based on pure random chance. The person who won has won every single round by calling correctly each time. If you were a spectator at this tournament, you would feel there was something almost magical about this winner. The winner herself might feel that she was somehow special and might attribute it to God if she was religious, or to the universe somehow conspiring to make her win. Daniel Dennett uses this thought experiment in his book, Darwin's Dangerous Idea, to show how we attribute design to outcomes that result from chance events. A living organism is such an outcome. I am using this thought experiment here to show how we might tell stories simply because we can't see what is really happening. To return to our story of I am thirsty, there are many factors that lead to a feeling of thirst. Inner factors like metabolism, perspiration, and many others, and external factors like heat, dryness, exposure, etc. Stories like these about physiological conditions are harmless and useful. They are probably the earliest stories in our evolution and important for survival. The problem is that this mechanism became used in more and more situations where it is not entirely warranted and entangles us in ways that create suffering. For example, a person might say, I am a timid person. Notice how this cannot even be always true, because if it was, there is almost nothing you can venture to do. The storytelling mechanism connects dots across vast gaps and tells a story. These gaps or holes are ignored. Are you always timid? Every single moment? The overall picture drawn then becomes a filter for further experience, because we view everything through this lens, I am a timid person. And before long, patterns of behavior get hardened and set, and we are trapped and entangled. So, the key is to recognize the storytelling mechanism at work. Neuroscientists have documented many cases of split brain patients where each half of the brain fabricates different stories. It is clearly a mechanism in the brain, and not even a unified mechanism. Once we understand the mechanism, we can assess the story to see gaps, beliefs, holes, assumptions, and separate facts from fabrications, see the holes in the story, and disentangle ourselves for greater freedom. Let's summarize this episode. Point number one: stories arise from our observations of events and experience where we posit a cause and effect. Point number two: some of these causes appear to us like independent agents, courtesy the hyperactive agency detector module. Point number three: we tell stories where we are the causes. We forget that some outcomes are inevitable given all the factors at work, as the coin toss tournament illustrates. Living organisms and their actions are all the outcomes of innumerable chains of events. Point number four: stories are useful and are one way of seeing. Seeing through the story does not mean we stop acting. Point number five: stories that entangle us in thickets of confusion, fabrication, assumptions, and beliefs are especially important to see through. Seeing through them gives us the freedom to retell the story in different ways. One caution: the new story, though it frees us from the old, is also a story and can also become a new source of entanglement if we are not careful. Point number six: language and grammar have hard coded our ideas of subject and object. So we think there is some indestructible essence at our core that is the cause of actions. But the I at the center is just another story. For today's practice, think about your day today. If you had to write a story about the day from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed, how would you tell it? How would you describe yourself and your qualities, your character, your abilities? How many of these are really hard-coded, permanent? Can you see holes in them, gaps where you don't have those qualities, skills, or character? Can you see that many of the outcomes of the day are really the result of inner and outer conditions where you have no control? Many may even be invisible. In the next episode, we will examine some findings of neuroscience that help us see even more deeply and question even more deeply. I'll see you then.